Have you ever felt eyes on you, watching your every move? But when you turned around, there was nothing but shadows and silence. That was my life for 3 weeks on the Arc tourist station, and I'm about to tell you something that still makes my hands tremble when I think about it. My name is Marcus Cole, and I served as a cultural liaison for the human embassy on one of the most diverse space stations in the known galaxy. It was supposed to be a quiet assignment, a chance to learn alien customs, translate diplomatic documents, and basically stay out of trouble. But trouble found me in the strangest form imaginable. A girl with silver hair that seemed to catch light that didn't exist. Delicate pointed ears that marked her as Velani, one of the oldest species in the Galactic Coalition, and eyes the color of morning frost that never, not once in 3 weeks, blinked when they were watching me. The first time I noticed her was in the Commerce Ring, that massive circular marketplace where species from 100 worlds traded goods and gossip in equal measure. I was buying fruit from a 4-armed vendor when a prickle ran up my spine, that ancient human instinct that screamed danger even when my eyes couldn't find a source. I turned slowly, scanning the crowd of chitinous exoskeletons, floating, gaseous beings in containment suits, and the occasional fellow human looking as out of place as I felt. That's when I saw her. She stood perfectly still near a pillar about 30 meters away, wearing fitted dark tactical pants and a sleek top with subtle luminescent threading that marked her as someone of means. Her skin had that faint, ethereal glow that all Velani possessed, making her look like she'd been carved from moonlight and given breath. But it was her expression that unnerved me most. Or rather, her complete lack of one. She wasn't smiling, wasn't frowning, wasn't showing any emotion at all. She just watched me with those frost-colored eyes, like I was an equation she was trying to solve. I raised my hand in what I hoped was a universal greeting, but she didn't respond. She simply turned and vanished into the crowd as if she'd never existed at all. I told myself it was nothing. The station held over 2 million beings, and coincidences happened. But then I saw her again the next day in the transit hub, and again at the Xenobiology archives, where I was researching Velani customs for an upcoming diplomatic function, and again at the observation deck, where I went to watch the nebulous shift colors during what passed for night on the station. Always silent, always watching, always at the exact distance where approaching her seemed both possible and pointless. You're being paranoid, I muttered to myself on the 4th day, catching her reflection in a shop window. But paranoia implies imagination, and there was nothing imaginary about the silver-haired girl who stood in an alley, mouth, head tilted slightly like a curious bird, those pointed ears catching the artificial light in a way that made them seem almost translucent. I decided to confront her. My heart was hammering as I walked toward the alley, rehearsing what I'd say. Excuse me, but why are you following me? Do I know you from somewhere? Is there something you need? But when I reached the alley entrance, she was gone. Not walking away, gone. Not hiding behind something, gone. Just gone, as if she'd dissolved into the recycled air. The walls were smooth metal with nowhere to hide. I stood there for a long moment, breathing hard, wondering if I was losing my mind. The thing that really got to me wasn't the following. It was the silence. In my 3 years of interspecies diplomatic work, I'd learned that the Velani were anything but quiet. They were known for their melodic voices, their love of debate and philosophical discourse, their tendency to fill silence with observations about the nature of existence. A silent Velani was like a mute songbird, so unusual that it either meant something was terribly wrong or something was terribly deliberate. I filed a report with station security, describing the girl in detail. The officer, a hulking being that looked like someone had crossed a rhinoceros with a grandmother's armchair, reviewed my statement with obvious boredom. Velani female, silver hair, pointed ears, no verbal contact. It summarized in a voice like grinding gravel. You've described approximately 47,000 individuals currently aboard this station. Unless she threatens you directly, there's nothing we can do. I left the security office feeling more unsettled than when I'd arrived. That night, I couldn't sleep. My quarters felt smaller than usual, the walls pressing in, the recycled air tasting stale on my tongue. I kept thinking about those frost-colored eyes and the perfect stillness of her body. What did she want? Why me? I was nobody special, just a translator who'd been sent to this station because I had a gift for languages and a tendency to stay calm when tentacles were waving in my face. Around what my body clock told me was 3 in the morning, I heard it. A sound so soft it barely registered, like silk dragging across metal. I sat up in bed, my blood running cold. The sound came from outside my door. I grabbed the emergency beacon on my nightstand, ready to summon security, but something stopped me. Call it intuition, call it stupidity, call it the same impulse that makes humans stick their hands in dark holes to see what's inside. I walked to the door and opened it. She was there. The silver-haired girl stood directly outside my quarters. Close enough that I could see the subtle glow of her skin was actually a network of microscopic luminescent veins. Beautiful and utterly alien despite her human-like features. Her eyes met mine, and for the first time, I saw something in them besides that calculating stillness. I saw fear. Not fear of me, but fear for me. "Why are you following me?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She didn't answer. Her lips parted slightly, and for a moment I thought she was about to speak, but then her gaze shifted to something behind me, something inside my quarters. Her frost-colored eyes widened, and she grabbed my arm with surprising strength, pulling me out of my doorway and down the corridor. "Wait," I protested, stumbling after her. "What are you doing? What's going on?" She didn't respond. She just kept pulling me through the station's night cycle corridors, past dimmed shops and sleeping beings curled in transit pods. Her grip on my arm was like iron wrapped in silk, and her expression had shifted from fear to something closer to determination. We ran for what felt like miles, through sections of the station I'd never seen, past warning signs in languages I couldn't read, until finally we emerged into a small garden dome where artificial trees grew toward a transparent ceiling that showed the swirling colors of the nebula above. Only then did she release me. I bent over, gasping for breath, while she stood perfectly still, watching the entrance we'd come through. "Okay," I managed between breaths. "Okay, you need to tell me what's happening right now." She turned to look at me, and in the strange light of the nebula, her features seemed softer, more human, more vulnerable. She raised one finger to her lips in the universal gesture for silence, then pointed at her own throat and shook her head. She couldn't speak. Whether by choice or inability, she was telling me that words were not an option. "Then write it," I said. "Draw it. Sign it. There has to be some way you can communicate." For a long moment, she just stared at me. Then slowly, she reached into a pocket of her tactical pants and pulled out a small device, a translator pad, similar to the one I use for work. Her fingers moved across its surface, and when she turned it toward me, I read the words that changed everything. "My name is Lyris. I am a silencer of the Velani. Order. For 3 weeks I have been protecting you from the Void Walker that is trying to claim your body. I cannot speak, because it would hear me. It is in your quarters right now, waiting for you to return." My blood turned to ice. I'd heard of Void Walkers in diplomatic briefings. Classified files that most humans weren't supposed to access. They were parasitic entities that existed between dimensions, invisible to most species, capable of possessing any sentient being and wearing their body like a suit. The possessed became puppets, their minds trapped inside their own skulls, while something ancient and hungry controlled their every action. "That's impossible," I whispered. "Void Walkers were eradicated centuries ago." Lyris shook her head slowly, typing again on her device. "They were not eradicated. They were contained. One has escaped. It has been following you for 5 weeks, studying you, learning your patterns. It was waiting for the perfect moment to strike. I have been preventing that moment." "How?" I demanded. "How can you prevent something invisible?" She hesitated, then typed, "I can see them. All silencers can. It is why we exist. We see the unseen. We guard the unguarded. We are the last line of defense against the void. But I have broken my oath by protecting you in secret. I should have reported the walker immediately. The Velani protocol is to eliminate the host before possession can occur." The words hit me like a physical blow. "Eliminate the host? You mean me?" Lyris nodded once, her frost-colored eyes filled with something that looked almost like pain. "The order would have killed you to be safe. I could not allow that." "Why?" I asked. "You don't know me. We've never even spoken before tonight. Why risk everything to protect a stranger?" She typed nothing for a long time. The nebula swirled overhead, casting shifting colors across her silver hair, making her glow change from blue to purple to soft pink. When she finally showed me the screen, her hands were trembling slightly. "Because I saw what the walker saw in you, the thing that made it choose you as a host. Void Walkers. do not select randomly. They choose beings with potential, beings who could change the course of history. The walker saw your future, the connections you will make, the bridges you will build between species. It wanted to corrupt that future. I wanted to protect it. I read those words 3 times, struggling to process what she was telling me. You've been following me in silence for 3 weeks, risking your life, betraying your order, all because you believe I'm going to do something important someday? She tilted her head in that bird-like way I'd come to recognize, and for the first time since I'd met her, a small smile tugged at the corner of her lips. She typed, also because you gave your lunch to a hungry maintenance drone on your second day aboard the station. Anyone WHO shows kindness to machines is worth saving. I couldn't help it. Despite the terror, despite the revelation that an invisible monster had been stalking me for over a month, I laughed. It was a strangled, desperate sound, but it was real. That drone looked sad, I said. I didn't know droids could look sad, but that one managed it. Lyris's smile widened just slightly, and something warm passed between us, a connection that felt inexplicably right. But the moment shattered when a door on the far side of the garden dome burst open and a squad of armored figures poured through. They were Velani. I could tell by their pointed ears and luminescent skin, but these were dressed in elaborate ceremonial armor that marked them as Royal Guard, the elite protectors of the Velani government. Silencer Lyris of the Third Order, the lead guard announced, his voice booming through the dome. You have been charged with dereliction of duty and harboring a potential Void Walker host. By the authority of the Velani Crown, you are commanded to surrender the human for immediate termination. Lyris moved before I could react, putting herself between me and the guards. She still didn't speak, but her posture shifted into something I recognized from years of studying body language across species. A defensive stance that screamed she would fight to the death before letting them touch me. Stand aside, Silencer, the lead guard ordered, and I could hear confusion in his voice. Lyris was one of them, a member of an ancient order sworn to protect the galaxy from Void Walkers. Her refusal to cooperate clearly wasn't something he'd expected. Lyris, I said softly, putting a hand on her shoulder. You can't fight them all. Maybe if we explained. She turned her head slightly and gave me a look that needed no translation. Trust me. Then she pulled out her translator pad and held it up so the guards could see. She typed rapidly, and when she was done, she turned the screen toward them with an expression that had gone ice cold. I couldn't see what she'd written, but I saw the effect it had on the guards. The lead guard's face went pale. His soldiers exchanged glances of visible alarm. One of them actually took a step backward. That's not possible, the lead guard said, his voice suddenly uncertain. The containment was secure. Lyris typed again, showing them the screen. The lead guard read it, and visibly shuddered. Where is it now? He asked. Lyris pointed toward the door they'd come through, the door that led back toward my quarters. She typed one more message and showed them. If you kill the human, the walker will simply choose another host, probably one of you, possibly the entire station. Is that a risk you wish to take? The lead guard's jaw tightened. I watched fear and duty war across his face, and for a long moment, I genuinely didn't know which would win. Then he spoke into a communication device on his wrist, issuing rapid orders in Velani that my translator couldn't fully process. When he was done, he looked at Lyris with something that might have been respect or might have been resentment. The containment fleet has been alerted. They're dispatching a full purge team. He paused, his gaze shifting to me. The human stays with you until the walker is dealt with. The silencer order will determine your fate afterward. Lyris nodded once, apparently satisfied with this outcome. The guards departed with considerably less hostility than they'd arrived with, leaving us alone in the garden dome once more. What did you write? I asked. What scared them so badly? Lyris typed. I told them the truth. The Void Walker that is hunting you is not just any walker. It is one of the original 5, the entities that nearly destroyed the galaxy 10,000 years ago. If it possesses you, it will use your diplomatic connections to spread to every species in the coalition. Within a year, the entire galaxy would fall. I sat down heavily on a garden bench, the weight of her words crushing. One of the original 5, and it chose me. Lyris sat beside me, close enough that I could feel the subtle warmth that radiated from her luminescent skin. She typed, You are not special because ID chose you. It chose you because you are special. There is a difference. We sat there in silence as the nebula swirled above us. Two beings from different worlds caught in a crisis neither of us had asked for. I became aware of her breathing, soft and rhythmic, and the way her silver hair caught the light each time the nebula shifted colors. You could die for this, I said quietly, for protecting me. They could execute you when this is over, she typed. Then ID will have been worth ID. I turned to look at her, really look at her, for the first time. Beyond the alien ears and the glowing skin, I saw a person. A young woman who had sacrificed everything, her order, her safety, her very voice, to protect someone she'd never even spoken to. Why can't you speak? I asked. Is it a vow? Lyris shook her head. She typed. Silencers bond with the void. We watch. It lets us see the walkers, but it also lets them hear us. If I speak aloud, the walker hunting, you would know everything. Where we are, what we know, how to avoid the purge. Team, my silence is the only weapon I have. I thought about that, about the loneliness of it. 3 weeks of following me, watching over me, unable to explain or communicate or even ask for help. 3 weeks of silent vigil while an ancient evil circled closer and closer to its prey. Thank you, I said. I don't know if those words are enough, but thank you. Lyris smiled that small, tentative smile again. She typed, you could thank me by surviving. The next 12 hours were the longest of my life. The Velani purge team arrived and began hunting the Void Walker through the station. Lyris and I stayed in the garden dome, guarded by a rotating squad of royal guard who watched her with suspicion and me with undisguised fear. During the hours of waiting, Lyris and I talked, in our strange fashion, her typing, me speaking. I learned that she'd been a silencer for 7 years, that she'd been born on the Velani homeworld during a meteor shower, and her parents believed the falling stars had given her the gift of seeing the unseen. I learned that she loved a Velani dessert called crystal honey, that she found human music fascinating because it contained emotions her species' songs lacked, and that before she took her vow of silence, her favorite thing in the galaxy was the sound of rain on leaves. I told her about Earth, about oceans and mountains and forests. I told her about my family, about the sister who'd inspired me to study languages because she was deaf and I'd learned to sign before I could properly speak. I told her that I'd joined the diplomatic corps because I believed communication could solve any problem, that understanding was the first step toward peace. You were right to believe that, she typed. Understanding is how we defeat the void. Void walkers thrive on isolation, on beings who are alone and afraid. Connection is their enemy. Around our 10, the lights in the station flickered. An alarm wailed briefly before cutting off. Lyris jumped to her feet, her frost-colored eyes scanning something I couldn't see. Then her face broke into an expression of pure relief, and she sagged against the garden bench. She typed with shaking hands. They found IT. The walker is contained. I felt tears prick my eyes, tears I hadn't even known I'd been holding back. It's over? Lyris nodded. Then slowly, she opened her mouth and spoke for the first time. It's over, she said, and her voice was exactly what I'd imagined, soft and melodic, like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. You can speak now, she smiled, and there were tears in her eyes too. For the first time in 3 weeks, yes, though I may need to practice. Silence becomes a habit. The Royal Guard arrived minutes later to escort us to the command center. The lead guard's attitude had changed completely. He approached Lyris with something approaching reverence. Silencer Lyris, he said formally. The purge team leader wishes me to convey that without your intervention, this walker would have possessed the human and spread through the diplomatic corps. You have quite possibly saved the galaxy. Lyris inclined her head in acknowledgement, but said nothing. The silencer order has reviewed your actions, the guard continued. While unorthodox, they have been deemed justified. You are cleared of all charges. He paused, then added more quietly, I must admit, when we arrived, I was terrified. Not of the walker, but of the possibility that we might be wrong about you. That we might kill an innocent and let a monster escape. That fear terrified you, Lyris said softly. As it should have. The day we stop fearing our own capacity for error is the day we truly become monsters. It was, I realized, the quotable line. The words that would stay with me for the rest of my life. The guard nodded, then gestured for us to follow. But before we left the dome, Lyris caught my hand. Marcus, she said, speaking my name for the first time. I know you must return to your embassy, and I must return to my order. But perhaps sometimes, you might want company that isn't bound by silence. I looked at her, at this extraordinary girl who had sacrificed everything to protect a stranger, who had seen something in me worth saving when an ancient evil soul only a vessel to corrupt. I'd like that, I said. I'd like that very much. 3 months later, Lyris was assigned as the permanent silencer liaison to the human embassy, a new position created specifically because of what she'd done. She still couldn't speak when actively monitoring for void walkers, but during her off hours, her voice became the most welcome sound in my life. We never defined what we were to each other, not then. But every evening, we'd meet in that garden dome where she'd first broken her silence. And we'd sit together as the nebula painted colors across her silver hair, talking about everything and nothing, building something that neither of us had words for yet. The void walker that had hunted me was returned to containment, sealed away with its 4 siblings in a prison beyond space and time. But sometimes, late at night, I'd remember those 3 weeks when death had stalked me unseen, and I'd think about the silent girl who had stood between me and the darkness. The royal guard had been terrified when they learned the truth. An original 5 void walker, a silencer who'd broken her vows, a human diplomat who'd nearly become the instrument of galactic destruction. But what terrified them most, I think, was the reminder that salvation often comes in unexpected forms. That the things which save us are not always grand or obvious. Sometimes salvation is quiet. Sometimes it follows in silence, asking nothing in return, until the moment when silence itself becomes the greatest protection of all.